I'm pretty excited for this full build Friday, because I've actually been puzzling over this character for a little bit. We're back to Zenless Zone 0 to build yet another member of Obel Squad, and after featuring the team's sniping sweetheart, this time around, we're checking out the Chimera Cutie Pie and her commander, Orphie and Magus.
I think you mean us.
Right. Us.
Before we begin, we're now on Patreon. You can get builds and monsters 3 weeks early there, as well as unique items and extra content. Even a little bit helps us go a long way. The dual nature of this character makes for a fairly interesting concept that I'm not certain we'll be able to really make work. But I'm still gonna try, so let's gear up and get ready. Orphie's a member of the Defense Forces Obel Squad, and she has an intelligent construct affixed to her tail that goes by the name of Magus. Not only is Magus the captain of Obel Squad, her original body is actually who Orphie was cloned from. Orphie was originally meant to serve as a new body for Magus, but became her gunner instead, which has left her with a whole host of issues. Now when it comes to gameplay, Orphie is a fire attack agent who wields a knife in combat in concert with blasts from Magus. She's predominantly designed around aftershocks, attacking from off-field whenever her allies attack and aiding them with laser blasts. Doing so lets her build up bottled heat, which she can consume to activate Heat Charge to fire a beam that grows in power while also granting the zeroed-in effect to her allies, increasing their attack power. She makes a good bit of spinning attacks, and she can passively enhance the aftershock effects of her other allies as well. By delving into her mindscapes, she can cut through the resistances of foes, enhance her zeroed in, and better weave her attacks and abilities together. She also has a signature W engine in the form of the Bellicose Blaze, which increases her crit rate and lets her ignore some defense of her foes after she triggers an aftershock against them that deals fire damage. I feel like a rough part of this build will be making Orphie and Magus feel like distinct parts of the same character, and they might honestly come down more to flavor than mechanics. When it does come to her mechanics though, the important aspects will be representing her aftershocks, which means letting her attack outside of her turn, and her zeroed in enhancing the attacks of her allies. Also, I do definitely want to work some fire into her kit, but that's more of an auxiliary thing. Getting into it, despite the ears, the horns, the tail, ZZZ does actually describe Orphie as a human. Now that's not the only reason I'm using this ancestry, there's actually some mechanical purposes behind it, but we will make it a little bit more unique with the Gonzi heritage. This can play into her unique appearance, but it more importantly provides her with Smashing Tail, so that she has a tail attack that she can make use of. We'll likely couple this with a tailblade weapon to represent the knife that Magus carries, and it gives us a good start on featuring her. Rounding out with her ability scores, she'll take boost to dexterity and charisma, so that she's quick to the attack and a capable commander, and that concept actually plays into her background as well. I went with veteran, more in reference to Magus rather than Orphie. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I could see going for something like Martial Disciple if you want to reference Orphie more directly. Presuming you stick with veteran though, it provides her with training in athletics and warfare lore, while her familiarity with soldiering means that she has armor assist, which feels fitting with how Magus would do equipment checks for her squad. This also means that she gets a boost to Constitution, and then a free boost to Dexterity. That brings us to her class, and in a strange coincidence, we'll actually be building Orphie and Magus as an Operative, much like how we built Trigger's one so long ago. We will switch things up just a bit for this Dex-based Martial class, and honestly, it's almost opposite of our last Operative, as we make use of the Striker specialization. This lets her swap out her mastery of guns with melee weapons and unarmed attacks, so that she can make use of her knife when aiming, and also access the reactive step reaction. This isn't quite the sort of reaction we're really looking for, but we will find some nice action compression with the mobile aim feat. I like the idea of feats of this sort that let her compress down multiple actions, because it kind of plays into the dual nature of Orphie and Magus. Perhaps Orphie handles the stride, while Magus takes the time to aim. Quick Jump is another example of action compression, but one that doesn't quite mesh with this idea, mainly because it just lets her jump faster, though it is still a solid and useful feat. Our specialization in the Operative Striker would usually mean that we get trained in athletics, but after already getting that from our background, we will instead take skill increases to Acrobatics, Arcana, Intimidation, and Stealth. Operatives aren't quite as much of the skill monkeys that rogues are, but this is still a good little lineup. For our ability scores, we'll be bumping up her Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. Her dexterity will be her main combat stat, but that strength will be useful for increasing her damage a bit since she fights in melee, whereas her charisma will actually play into another aspect of her kit that we have coming up. In a first for the channel, we'll be using the Hostility Host dedication at 2nd level, which might seem a strange choice. This is typically accessible to Sukri, but I think this is a great means of representing Magus, or at least the closest we can get with it crafting a tiny creature onto Orphie's body. I could take or leave its repel ambient magic, but its spit ambient magic will be important, even if, for now, it's limited to piercing damage. More the 50 cal rounds than her fire breath. Further relating to Magus is the intimidating glare skill feat. Orphie is not remotely the sort to pull this off herself, except for her teaser, but Magus has glares aplenty that she fires off just as readily as she does her high X rounds, though most of her threats do tend towards the verbal. With our duo of Dangerous Dames 3rd level, we'll acquire the rather unique Focused feature, a specialized skill set, and then a skill increase to make them an expert in acrobatics. However, that specialized skill set means that we will also be taking an athletic skill feat to gain Titan Wrestler. This will play into another feat that she'll be taking a bit later, and will help her fight against the more massive ethereals. Along with that, Fleet will get worked in per Magus' suggestion, if nothing else.
If you can't take the ethereals down, you better outrun them, got it?
Before we get deeper into our Hostility Host archetype, we do have to take Killsteal at 4th level. This reaction is a fantastic means of representing her aftershock attacks, especially since they trigger off of the attacks of her allies. It's an important part of her kit, and we can pair it with Tumbling Teamwork as her skill feat. Orphie pulls off a lot of very acrobatic maneuvers that help out her allies, and this feat helps to further emphasize that. For these fair but fiery femmes, level 5 features ability boost to strength, dexterity, wisdom, and charisma. They become a master gunner, which applies to certain melee weapons for her because of her striker specialization, and gain urban operator, which is kinda eh. We do get a skill increase for athletics, and also gain a skillful tail, giving Magus a means of interacting with the world just a bit more, like those times when she pulls Orphie up, or more physically pushes her around. A very important aspect of this build is level 6's Versatile Mutation. For now, this will just let her spit ambient magic as bludgeoning or slashing damage, but more important is the fact that it will let her add in fire damage to her options in 2 levels. From there, we'll slide dive for cover into the build. I think this is more fun mainly for covering her more soldiery aspects, letting her leap to some safety whenever there's incoming fire. Our level 7 is pretty packed for our pyro-producing pair, as they gain an Operative's Edge, Reflex Mastery, Weapon Specialization, and a skill increase to make them a Master in Acrobatics. Now on the topic of skills, we do get another specialized skill set, which means that they can take Powerful Leap. This will let Orphie get a bit more use out of Dive for Cover, and she wraps the level up with Toughness, giving her some extra hit points so that she can hang out on the front line, which is where she'll usually be even when she's spitting ambient magic, which, notably, becomes fire damage with level 8. This level also features Channing Mutation, which I'm mainly suggesting as a means of representing the laser beam that Magus often fires, especially during her special attack. We then get a little rounding out of our recent skill feats with Kip Up. That dive for cover feat is improved by Powerful Leap, but it is followed by us landing prone. With this addition, Orphie and Magus can now get back up from prone without having to spend an action on it, while also avoiding reactions. Our 9th level provides us with the Overwhelming Strike Enhanced Exploit, resembling a little bit of the Rogue's debilitating strike, while also lowering the defense of enemies. She does further gain Operative Resilience, as well as a skill increase that makes her a Master in Athletics. Now we do get one of the main reasons I went for the human ancestry here, as we can pick up the multi-talented feat to take an Envoy Dedication. This provides the pair with a way of buffing the attack of their allies through the Get 'em action, while also making Orphie trained in Deception and Diplomacy. They can't use a 2-action version of the Get 'em just yet, but this is still a solid reference to the zeroed in effect. To start the level 10 of this Tympanic Tactical twosome, we have ability boost to Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, and Charisma. We will immediately expand on the Envoy with Really Get 'em. This means that we can get the Lead by Example effect, which pumps up the damage of our allies, and is thus even more on point with their zeroed in. We can also take Catfall for a skill feat. Honestly, I mostly think this is just one of the best acrobatic skill feats available, and there are countless instances where you'll be able to find some use for it. Looking at level 11 for Orphie and Magus, on the move gets them a bit of a speed boost, but the Operative expertise is almost a bit more important, given the way that the spit ambient magic works. They also get a skill increase to become an expert in intimidation, which references Magus a bit more, whereas the keen follower general feat is much more in the vein of Orphie. As a clone, she's an eager learner, even if much of her learning comes at the words of Magus, who she can't quite use this feat alongside, but I think it still fits. Coming in perhaps a little late is Deadly Mutation at level 12, which pumps up Magus's damage and allows her to potentially inflict persistent fire damage, as though she had managed to trigger a fire anomaly. We'll start getting into some more intimidation skill feats with Terrifying Resistance. Admittedly, Orphie and Magus aren't exactly defensive units, but I think this is a very solid feat overall, with that 24-hour bonus against all spells a target may sling. Lovely lucky level 13 leads to a legendary gunner, just a slight misnomer in this case, light armor expertise, and a skill increase to make this combustive chimera couple a master in intimidation. Then, while the name might not sound right for Magus, I'd include Mischievous Tail for her ancestry feat here. This means that she can disarm and trip even without a free hand, which I'm not sure will be much of an issue. But since she has Smashing Tail, she adds those traits to her tail attack as well, which I do think we might be able to squeeze some use out of. Speaking of getting use out of things, 14th level features Spray Mutation. This means they can spit ambient magic in a 15-foot cone still as a single action, which I think will be handy in resembling some of the circling or sweeping strikes of Magus. On that note, we also gain the Battlecry skill feat. Magus gives a few of these throughout the chapter, with the most repeated one being her Opal Squad, Gear Up, and Get Ready. Kicking off level 15 are ability boosts to Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, and Charisma. From their class, they gain Critical Aim, which I'm not entirely certain on its interaction with the Striker specialization, as well as Greater Weapon specialization. They will become a legend in Acrobatics, and can get Wall Jump as a bonus skill feat to enhance their mobility, which is also the idea behind Feather Step as their general feat. This works with their reactive step ability to make it easier for them to chase down foes when they try to evade the duo. Now I feel like Magus is pretty well covered by level 16, so we will take a brief detour into Hair Trigger, effectively providing Orphie with reactive strike against her mark. I'm mainly taking this as another way to resemble her Aftershocks, and it can be followed with Terrified Retreat. This definitely plays a bit more into Magus again, and lets her send smaller ethereals, or disobedient soldiers, running for the hills. Settling into 17 are Scorching Soldiers Seize Resolve, Tactical Barrage, and a skill increase that makes them a legend in Intimidation. I've picked up most of the tail feats that I wanted at this point, so I'd take the opportunity to go for Heroic Presence. Orphie does have some support capabilities in her kit, but none of them actually resemble this. Nevertheless, I feel like it fits for this conflagration-causing commander. We're back on the Astili host at level 18 for Propulsive Mutation, just to enhance the range of our spit ambient magic. After all, that laser beam that Magus launches is pretty impressive. We see a return of one of my favorite feats though with Scare to Death. This has absolutely no bearing on either of these Temperamental 2, but it's still one of the best skill feats in the game. Level 19 is pretty jam-packed as it comes with Galaxy Renowned, Incredible Senses, Light Armor Mastery, and a skill increase making us a legend in Athletics. We'll use Incredible Scout for their general feat, since part of the story of Opal Squad is serving as a sort of expeditionary force, and then that just leaves us with level 20. This of course starts with ability boost to Dexterity, Constitution, Wisdom, and Charisma. Orphie and Magus both acknowledge themselves as dummies, which is why we've never once increased our intelligence, but we will be smart ourselves and take Combat Reflexes as our capstone class feat. This means that they'll be able to use multiple reactions in a round, which will aid the pair in achieving their Aftershocks. The build closes out with Cloud Jump as their skill feat, which I just think is generally useful. It's another case akin to Scare to Death, where it isn't exactly indicative of the character, but is a solid pick overall. In regards to playing this pair of pyro professionals, your bread and butter will still be aiming and then using your knife to fillet foes. You do have Spit Ambient Magic, which will be better used against groups or when at range, but a potential idea, and one with some excellent action compression, is closing in on a foe with Mobile Aim. Once there, do a 2-action Get 'em. With Aim having a bit of a passive effect, this means that she'll get the effect on her lead by example strike, while also bolstering all her teammates. If this happens to hit and trigger her overwhelming strike, she'll also be able to make that enemy off guard, and make them much easier to hit. Also keep an eye out for when you can use your reactions, as they will be a great way to work in damage even if you have a suboptimal turn. Getting into a free Archetype game, I think the biggest boon would be the fact that Orphie can take a few more operative feats. One that immediately comes to mind is Dual Aim, which will make hair trigger, and therefore combat reflexes, a bit more valuable. She could also look at the likes of Double Tap, Switch Target, or Skirmish Strike, all being ways to enhance her action economy. If you want to explore her Envoy option some more, feats such as Take 'em Alive are pretty solid, though you could also look at Tag Team as yet another way to perform her aftershocks. Now, if you ask me, I think our soldiers here are geared up and ready to go. But let's do one last equipment check before they go on mission. Orphie and Magus are built as a Gonzi human operative with a veteran background, which helps to represent Magus' history as a soldier, while she is more physically represented by a series of tail feats from the Gonzi heritage. There's a number of weapons you could use to represent their knife, with a tail blade perhaps being the best, while the fire in her kit can come from her versatile mutation as an Hostili host, or certain equipment. For her focus on aftershock effects and attacking outside of turn, we have the likes of Kill Steal, Hair Trigger, and Combat Reflexes helping both of those. For the area effects that Magus produces, there's the Spraying mutation or the Chaining mutation, which are neither quite as big as I want them to be, but we have to accept that we need to balance things out a bit. Another important aspect of Orphie and Magus is their zeroed in effect, which we can recreate through the Envoy's Get 'em, especially once we enhance it with Really Get 'em. These pair can also lower the defenses of foes through their Mindscapes and W engines alike, and although it takes a while to get there, the Striker's specialization means that she can inflict off guard with an overwhelming strike, and thus make things easier for her entire team. As a small side note, the Bellicose Blaze increases her critical rate, which is a semi-important stat for them overall. Such a stat doesn't exist in Starfinder or Pathfinder, but the enhanced attack bonus of the Operative does mean that she's more likely to crit overall. Born and built for battle, this boisterous blaster and bubbling backup bring both Blade and Blaze to the brouhaha, butchering beasts and baddies in a brilliant barrage. Let me know what you think of the build and what other sorts of builds you want to see. If you dig what I've done, let me know with a like and a subscribe. I want to give a big thanks to the folks on the Patreon, with a special shout out to the Orc Overlords. That being Decaffeinate, Robert Miller, Shai Benster, and Vorthis. You too could head on over there for early access to the vids and extra content. Either way, thanks for watching and have a fantastic Friday.